I just want to say that my wife is crunching something in the microphone right now, and it makes me feel really good.
That was just mean.
Why you gotta be so mean?
Hi, I'm Finn. And I'm Sawyer. And you're listening to our house, A to Z.
Why?
You turned it on purpose when you knew I was eating a cough drop?
I did, because I could hear it in the microphone. I'm like, I just want this.
I actually have a scratchy throat. This is like a real scratchy throat. It's not just
you don't think when I'm eating a
oral
cough drop?
fixation.
Oh, I see. When I'm eating one while I'm preaching a message, I feel like you really come down on that, like, because it clanks
I'm not
against my teeth.
going to chew this cough drop into this microphone while it's recording. I'm not going to do that. I would never do that to people.
Well, I got a little bit at the beginning, so
Thanks.
I'm just going to have to sample that, play it on a loop through the rest of it as an additional track.
Or you could just listen back to any of your messages. Oh, you can hear it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, it is winter break right now.
Winter break, February vacation, also known as February vacation in these parts. And we have kids camp going on this week, and it is cray-cray.
It is insane out there.
But it's awesome.
But I love it. I actually love all the sound of the kids. It sounds like the mall again. It's like all like, playing and running around.
It definitely is. The only thing we're missing is like I'm missing the smell of like an Auntie Anne's pretzel cart or
I can fix that
umi
for you.
chicken.
Oh my gosh.
Because you always need to have like a good Chinese food
That's true.
restaurant in a mall food court.
We can do that. We don't have a lot of Asians here at the church, but we can see what we can wrangle up for a good hibachi food court.
It doesn't even have to be hibachi. It just has to be like General Tao's chicken.
Okay. Mugu Gai Pan.
And you need Sbarro's.
My favorite New York pizza joint, and I'm going to go get me a New York slice.
No, I could definitely go for an Auntie Anne's. In fact, I was just in the airport this week, and I was feeling lonely because I was flying by myself, and I stopped in Baltimore and got Auntie Anne's pretzel, the nuggets, because I like the cup of nuggets.
You stopped in Baltimore like you were like, I need to stop in Baltimore.
Yeah. No, I was like on a layover in Baltimore. And I'm like, you know what? I need some Auntie Anne's.
Nuggets.
Nostalgic. And listen, my first job was at the Gap.
Fall into the Gap.
In Hickory, North Carolina at the Valley Hills Mall. And I started there before I had my driver's license. I was driving there with my permit. I remember that. So I think I was like 15 and a half or something. And I would get a pretzel like every night on my break because it was like right across
And it was the only thing you could afford. You're like, one pretzel, please.
One pretzel.
They're like
$1.50. Hold the salt.
Too expensive.
I think it was pretty much.
No dipping sauce.
It was usually my paycheck, like to pay for the pretzel. My paycheck at the Gap would pay for the pretzel, but no dipping sauce. Yeah. No, that was before you paid for dipping sauce. Now it's like I think it's like $1.59 for a 2-ounce cup of dipping sauce. So anyway, unfortunately, it's worth it, and fortunately, I can afford it now. So because I only work part time at the
two, please.
I only work part time at the Gap.
Fall into the Gap. Fall into the Gap.
So. But anyway, I love those pretzels. They bring me right back. So yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for a food court. Maybe I'm just really hungry. I think this is a bad time to record a podcast. I'm like very hungry.
Because you're hangry?
I hope not.
I don't think you've crossed the line into anger yet.
It's bordering. I mean, you're going to have to.
I'll bring you something back.
The audience shall be the judge by the end.
I have a lunch meeting pretty soon, and I'll bring you something good back.
But your lunch meeting could be up to 2.5 hours long. And
no,
then
it won't be.
I might be just.
You never know.
A ball of flames by the time you get here. So.
And I will feed that fire. Anyway, so yes, winter break. I hope everybody's staying sane. I hope y'all took advantage of the
weather yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah. I mean, I was in South Carolina, but it was beautiful.
But we got it, and it was great. And tomorrow,
Operation Snowball.
Snow Report.
WPRO.
Actually, today, right? Everybody's going to listen to the podcast, of course, as soon as you wake up on Friday morning, and there's probably going to be a couple inches of snow.
Yeah.
But here's
a couple inches or up to 10?
Here's my prediction.
Okay, what
Ready?
do you got?
Let's both make predictions on what's going to happen, and then in the morning we'll actually know.
My prediction is you're going to be right. What are you going to say?
I'm going to say that I think we're going to get 4 to 5 inches.
Okay.
And it's all going to have fallen by like 7 a.m.
Okay.
And then it's going to be rain, like the whole day is just going to rain.
Okay, yeah. It's that time of year, isn't it?
You go.
I think there's going to be 4.5 to 5.5 inches.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to say probably it's going to stop around 7:30, 7:45. And the rest of the day is going to be mixed precipitation. This
is just like The Price is Right when somebody says like $1 and somebody's like $2.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Dang it.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I've only been looking at the weather in Augusta, Georgia for the last couple of days, so
fun.
I got to look it up. I got to see what's going on. But anyway, here we are.
Here we are.
Yep, back in the saddle.
All right, so speaking of malls.
Yeah, what do you got?
I feel like over the last couple of years, we've heard of a lot of churches popping up in malls.
Okay.
And this is kind of what we want to talk about today, is the quote-unquote big box church. The pros, the cons, the good, bad, the ugly, the outsider's perspective.
That is really key.
Is really key.
Yeah.
Not that you can always like change that or help that. But
no, but I think understanding it is good.
Yeah, and we wanted to talk about this today because we've heard from people in the past kind of some negativity about bigger churches.
Or some curiosity, too.
Or curiosity, yeah.
What's going on in there?
Or it's like, oh, I want to be there because it's a bigger church. And
that must mean they're doing something right.
That must mean they're doing something right. So you hear all about that. And so we kind of wanted to take some time today and talk about maybe like the dangers that can happen with bigger churches, but also our perspective on what the Lord's doing and why we don't feel like it falls in alignment with
all the stigmas usually attached to bigger churches.
Exactly.
Yeah. And which is probably what anybody in a bigger church would say if they're like leading a big church. They'll be like, here's why we're not like all the other big churches.
Right. Because you can have lots of churches that are doing like the wrong thing too, but nobody notices and nobody cares.
Because they never make it like to the forefront or to the public's attention.
Because nobody notices. So it's like it's okay for them to be
bad.
Or leading with the wrong motives because it's a small church.
Yeah, which isn't true. But I do think that I want to just give some validation. There's a reason why the world is leery of big churches, and I think because big churches automatically mean big money.
Yeah. And money means power.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't go that far, it's just the fact that what business does a church have? And people have asked that. What business does a church have in a mall? What business does a church have? I remember I was thinking when we first signed our lease on the Macy's and it was for $8,000 a month. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like this is the miracle of miracles. This is like God honoring the widow's mites.
Right.
Like the fact that we are going to be in here for $8,000 a month. Like I can't, this is like 12 cents a square foot. This is insane.
Right. In New England,
like all that. And then like being so excited and sharing that. And people are like, $8,000. Oh my gosh. How sinful it was to pay
but
that
not really
much.
Nobody from our church. That was like an outsider's perspective.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, no, it was an outsider's perspective.
Like what kind of church is stealing the money of their congregants in order to pay $8,000 a month in rent?
Yeah, all of that. And people were saying, when we first signed on, one of my favorite things was people were writing into the town Facebook page saying that they saw the pastor arriving on a helicopter.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Helicopter!
And,
like repeatedly. It kept happening that pastor owns a helicopter. He flies in and out on a helicopter.
Yeah.
Like what kind of person? He's robbing, he's stealing from all the people.
What kind of person takes a helicopter from Rehoboth to Swansea? Pretty crazy.
As frustrating as it was, we got a lot of kicks out of some of those Facebook posts from Swansea town people.
But I honestly feel like there's a little validation in why people are leery of it because it's like you expect big corporate conglomerates to have big real estate. You expect them to have big parking lots and have massive building projects. And honestly, not for nothing, but in the South, you kind of expect it too.
Yeah.
In the South, there's a culture of mega churches where it's like...
Do you feel like it's more acceptable in the South?
Yeah, just because it's more normal. Yeah, it's more common.
I know. Well, we just watched, this is terrible, we just watched two different, were they documentaries? One was a documentary, one was more of like a show, like a movie.
Biography story.
One was like that Gwen Shamblin.
Oh.
I can't remember what it was called.
It's called The Way Down.
The Way Down. That was real weird.
Yeah.
And then we watched the
Tammy Faye Baker.
Tammy Faye Baker movie.
Yeah.
It will definitely give you a bad taste in your mouth for big churches.
Yeah.
And that is so hard because those things are on Netflix and I don't remember what channel the other one was on, but it's what people are watching. It's what people are seeing about church.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's like never the good thing. It's always the loud things that are like the moral failures, the stealing, all of those things.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, even though if you have a small congregation, like if you have a congregation of 100 and the annual budget is whatever, $150,000, $200,000. Well, if you take that and multiply it by 10, then you're in, the $1.5 million, whatever dollars for a budget, and it's 1,000 people. The ratio is the same, or at least in the same neighborhood.
Right.
So the bigger the church, I think the bigger the everything, like the more it takes to put on an Easter production or like to have something for the kids or to do whatever it is that, you feel led to do.
And I think that's such an interesting argument because I have heard people argue that. And I think about how they never consider cost of living in different places in the world. Like it'll be okay for you to go purchase a $35,000 car or a $10,000 car. Now, somebody living in poverty might think that that is insane.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like how it's so relative. Like the financial things can be so relative.
Yeah.
And you never talk about all the good that is done that could have never been done if the finances weren't there to make it happen.
Right. And I think that it is, now you're dealing with like people's mindsets and like the poverty mindset. And there's some really great stuff. I know Danny Silk touches on that in that Culture of Honor book that we keep referencing. But, the lower class, middle class, and upper class, like wealthy versus poverty.
Right. The mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you see that stuff now, see the church through the lens of that perspective, it can be really bizarre to think that people are making decisions about hundreds and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. When it comes to heaven, everything belongs to the Lord anyway.
Right.
So it's like we can't really say, well, you're stewarding this. Well, there's a reason why big churches are stewarding what they're stewarding because the Lord's entrusted them with that.
Right.
And people have entrusted them with that. And so while, yes, in some circles there's manipulation and deception in terms of people giving and unethically giving and stuff like that, yes, and that's a whole nother topic that the Lord will deal with, the fires of hell. But for all intents and purposes today, it's like nobody's twisting anybody's arms to give.
Right. Maybe at some churches they are. I guess
maybe
we can only speak on behalf of
multiple
HPC.
offerings stuff. But the large churches that I am a little bit more closely familiar with or acquainted with, there's not a big emphasis on, you've got to give. It's that people have caught the vision of what God is doing in that organization, in that house, and through the ministries connected to it. Like I know there are people here who, because they know that 15% of everything coming off the top goes to missions, right? So 15 out of every $100 is automatically redirected to missions, local, abroad, whatever, and including benevolence and outreach and stuff like that. So when you look at that, you say, okay, people are automatically like, all right, that's more than a tithe off the tithe that's going outside of the house.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of put people's minds to ease too. And I love that. I love that people catch the vision for like, hey, we need to build this into what we're doing. Just as individuals, we build into our finances what's going to the Lord. The church builds into its finances what's going beyond itself.
Right.
I
think one cool thing we should talk about is as we started to grow as a church, we had a handful of people that kind of wanted to persuade us to go home church model or to kind of break off into smaller churches, and that at a certain point, church isn't church anymore. It's not practical. It's not what the New Testament church was supposed to be once you reach a certain number. I don't know what that number is, and I don't know how people, like what the exact number in the New Testament says that those home churches are supposed to be like stopped at.
I remember it said things like it grew by 3,000 that day.
Well, I was thinking about that.
And 5,000 were added to new believers.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they were all sitting in one sanctuary, like singing the same song at the same time, but it also doesn't say it wasn't.
Right.
You
right.
know?
So that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what was your mindset in saying, like, no, we want to stay as one church. We don't want to break up. And why?
Well, I like this interview style. I like this.
Just here to interview the pastor.
Just wait till I ask you some questions about the pastor's wife.
No, thank you.
I have said this to some of the folks that have been like, well, we can't just keep getting bigger.
Right.
Like part of me says like, well, take that up with the Lord because we're not trying to get bigger, but we're also not trying to church plant until the Lord leads us to do so.
Right. We're not trying to church plant either.
Yeah, we're not trying. In fact, I think we've probably pushed the envelope a little bit on actually trying to do it in areas where the Lord has slammed the door shut.
Right.
To the point where we've said, hey, we will fully fund this. Hey, we will get behind this. We'll make sure every I is dotted and T is crossed to plant a church. And nothing has ever materialized on the part of someone who has the heart or passion to do it.
Right.
In other words, no one's come up through the ranks and said, hey, this is what we want to do. We've had people who say, hey, we need to do home group type models. And I think the answer to that is those are happening. I think that is New Testament church. I think people, while they come together and worship, maybe in a synagogue type fashion, there's also places where people are gathering in more intimate settings.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, okay, that means that discipleship is happening, growth is happening, teaching is happening on both large scale and small scale settings. Now, don't get me wrong. I can't guarantee that if 1,000 people or 1,200 people over the course of a month of Sundays divided by 4 or whatever, however you want to do your averages or whatever, I can't tell you that every one of them is in a small group of some sort.
Right.
Just like I can't say that everybody who calls HPC home and shows up once every 6 weeks is here more than once every 6 weeks.
Right.
But I do think, though, that it comes down to people having relationships and knowing, okay, no matter how big, if this church is 10,000 people or if it's 10 people, I'm known.
Yeah.
And I know people and they know me, and they'll notice if I'm not here because we sit together, or because in addition to Sunday mornings, I'm also in their living room every week.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've always have kind of liked about the big church that people would probably challenge is that the people who are here who then really do want to be a part of it, want to be intentional to get deeper into like what the Lord is doing, like they do it. Mm-hmm. They do it. They're not the people who just come in and out on Sundays and are kind of like disconnected, don't know anybody, nobody knows me. There are those people that come and go, and they come and go in a small church too, and they come and go in a small group. But the people who are intentional to want to dive deeper, get more connected, all of those things, it happens.
Yeah. Yep. It's like persecution. It's like it only happens when you really believe that it's supposed to, and not just because it's easy and convenient. Right. And I think that's so good. I think that's important. Let me ask you this, as not just like a really attractive pastor's wife, but also as somebody who's been tasked with the exorbitant responsibility of decorating. Okay? So, which you may, I know this is a really hard question because our church is in a constant state of flux. So we're literally in a temporary space. Yes. Before that, we were in like a place we couldn't build walls. We couldn't add
like,
doors.
We're not going to spend any money. What we want you to do is go to this hotel liquidator.
Hey, we got a lot of good stuff from that guy.
Pick out some random mismatched furniture, and we want it to look really good.
Yeah.
But, oh, yay.
So let me speak to that.
P.S. We're going to keep the pink tile and the stained carpets. We're not going to change out any of those finishes. Just make it look good.
Well, I think you've done a really good job in spite of all of the anomalies there that you had to deal with.
Gosh, great teams.
But let me just say, I want to ask you, as somebody who's like also very spiritual and very aware of authentic spirituality, like genuine things of the Lord and desiring in your heart to see heaven move. What would you say to somebody who's like, well, because you have marble tile floors, or because you're picking out wallpaper for this, or you would spend $20,000 in furniture? By the way, $20,000 over 115,000 square feet or whatever it is. It's like this stuff, it just goes away. But I'm wondering, how do you balance that and reconcile it in your head if somebody's like, well, you should be getting everything from the Salvation Army, or you should be doing it for free or on the cheap or whatever. Why is decorating even important if this was really about God?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I mean, I'm a firm believer in we are just benefactors.
Beneficiaries?
Beneficiaries.
Might be the word.
We're not the benefactor. We're the beneficiaries of the Lord's provision, the Lord's blessing. And I think that there's so much, I mean, even about like the talents and like what the Lord has given us to steward. And I think just to do the worst of everything and leave things in shambles and for the sake of poverty is not what the Lord has for us. Yeah. I don't think that's what he wants. I don't think that's what he wants the non-believer to see and say, wow, man, being a Christian really is like living the blessed life. And of course, it's not just about things and it's not about stuff, but it's that the Lord takes care of his children and provides for them. And I think it does look different for everybody. And I feel like we just have to be intentional to do what we feel like as church leaders and of this specific house, like what we feel like we're supposed to do with this body. And it's not going to look the same for every church. Yeah.
No, it's good. I think the day that it crosses over where we're like, oh, we told the church we were going to give 15% to missions, but this year we're going to build a basketball court or we're going to carpet the whatever with some of that money instead. I think the day that crosses the line is the day that now we're lying to ourselves and to our church. But when people know, and again, that requires coming. So a big part of this is what it looks like from the outside. Like, and when you see like, wait a minute, this church isn't 200 years old and everything's like made out of wood, which by the way, back when a lot of these older churches that are all paid off, nobody's like paying rent or lease on a lot of these ancient churches in New England. But when they were built, they were like absolutely like creme de la creme of decor and like bringing in from Europe people to do stained glass and the ornate hand-carved everything and all of the marble that was
because
imported.
Everybody goes back to like everything you do with excellence and
do
as unto the Lord.
And because people said this is the house of the Lord.
Right.
Now, of course, we know that we're the temple of the Holy Spirit, but they're like, hey, if we want people to come into this building and be reminded of God, then it better be great. And here come the soaring cathedral ceilings and the giant cedars of Lebanon, or maybe that was in Solomon's temple. But either way, I think that what's crazy is that people will look at those churches and be like, well, they don't have as much money coming in and all this other stuff. Well, they might not, but in the time that building was built, it probably cost-wise was exorbitant, like exponentially more than what most churches are today that are built in like big box stores, like mega churches. And like you walk into a mega church today and it's a vanilla box. It's like, open floor plan. Everything is like basic, your carpet, your chairs, your whatever, like things that money might go into is like a sound system. Whereas in an old Catholic church or whatever, they might not have to do that based on acoustics and stuff like that. But I do think it's interesting that the modern perspective of church is either that it has nothing to offer or it's way over the top.
Right. I know. So that's what the perspective thing. So you could say to one church, okay, your budget for aesthetics in this building is 10% of your budget. One church could be 50% of their budget. One church could be 75% is all. And are one of those things like right or wrong? Like, who decides that?
Right. No.
Who decides that?
I know.
I think our heart and how we've done everything at the church has always been for the focus to not be on stuff, the focus not be on what we have or things or what kind of sound system or that, but making sure that people aren't distracted by all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, people decide for themselves what's going to be distracting to them, and that's unfortunate. But as much as we have the capacity or capabilities of keeping the distractions away. And so sometimes those are like noise things or aesthetics things, visual things. So there's not like, no, I don't want people to come in and like have to step over a puke stain like right when they walk in, because that could be potentially very distracting and a turnoff to people.
Yeah.
So there's things like that where it's like, it's just.
Yeah, people will be distracted by one thing or the other.
Yes.
Either the fact that there's no heat and I'm freezing to death, or the fact that like, wow, look at how like nice the furnishings are in here. You're going to be distracted. I think of like Robert Schuller, and when he built the Crystal Cathedral, I think it was in the 50s, famous American sort of televangelist and Christian speaker during that time period. And he built the Crystal Cathedral, and it was unlike anything that had ever been seen or known at the time. And it attracted a different group of people. And that's the people that God had put on his heart to minister to. And so there's this really cool connection between even the appearance of a church and how it's built and the crowd that the Lord is going after through that ministry. And I think that not everybody can be conscious of that all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to maybe just not immediately judge it. And by the way, I wanted to say this as you were talking earlier. I know that when we make things look nice, that we run the risk of people mistaking that as a priority for us, like a priority above the Lord.
Yep.
And people coming because they want to be at the church in the mall. We want to be at the church in the mall, or we want to be at the church, this big church where stuff's happening. I understand that, like, you're running that risk. But at the same time, I also know that by having really good worship, people could be coming here for a concert.
Yeah.
Or by having really good small groups, people could be coming here. Or by having a really good orphan and adoption ministry, people could be coming here not for God, but because they want support for their
kids programs, or I know any of those things.
Exactly. And so it's like,
they're like, this is the one my kid likes the best. They have the most fun when they're here.
Right.
So
people
we're going to pick
that.
this one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's all like, what's the heart posture behind that?
Right. And so what I have to say is to that, I'm not willing to compromise in areas where we can do and be better just to eliminate the risk that people will mistake that.
Right.
I would rather have them here and be able to minister the gospel through all of that and turn up the slow cooker on people's faith instead of just say, you know what, instead of having people think this, I'm going to be embarrassed, so we're not going to spend that money on that.
Yeah.
People will get the wrong idea. People will get the wrong idea, period.
There's
nothing after that. People will get the wrong idea. The public will get the wrong idea. I think what we have to do, and I remember this conversation coming up back, I was invited to sit on a podcast about race equality a while back in the middle of the Black Lives Matter stuff. And I was asked on that podcast, okay, so then if we're not supposed to protest and we're not supposed to boycott, and we're not supposed to, whatever, what are we supposed to do? My answer to that is my answer to so many things. Just continue to prove them wrong. Continue to prove them wrong. Don't be the person that the public is afraid of. Don't be the person that fits the stereotype of whatever it is that is connected to you. Don't fit that mold. Prove them wrong, prove them wrong, prove them wrong. And I think that that's why the church grew in the New Testament, because they continued to say that this is not a movement that is maintained or motivated by the things of this world. And so we're not after people's money. Will there still be a Judas among us? Yes, there will be. Will there still be a church that shows up in the news because, of embezzlement or fraud or whatever? Yes, probably, unfortunately, there will be. But if the majority of believers continue to prove that thing wrong, I love hearing people who talk about tithing with unbelievers or brand new Christians that just don't get it. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like people say, how can you afford to tithe? And the classic answer is, how can I afford not to?
Yeah.
And it's like you continue to prove them wrong by, no, we are blessed. Our church is blessed.
Yeah.
And people largely, it's not even like huge donations. It's mostly like the widow's mite.
Right.
And that's how the bills get paid. In fact, the biggest donations that come in, they go right back out because they're specifically raised or pursued for a purpose.
Yeah.
Scholarships or an outreach project or a missions thing or whatever. What's happening here in us just paying our bills is people being faithful because they caught the vision. And to me, that's important. That says that people are moving beyond the fine finishings, because in reality, if you see a place that's all pimped out with all this stuff, you may say, well, they don't really need my money. But if you're connecting to, wait a minute, God is doing something, the kingdom is coming through this place, and I want to invest here, I want to steward in partnership with that, to me, that means everything.
Yeah. Well, we have to move on because we have a couple more questions that we want to hit before we wrap up. And one of those things is every once in a while we'll have people that say they're going to leave the church because they like a smaller church.
Yeah.
And that's always a little bit chafing to me as like being in church leadership to hear that, because it is a little bit, I don't know, it feels a little bit hurtful, but we've heard it a handful of times over the last couple years. And
At least.
And what always comes to your mind, like my mind is always like, okay, so like what was the smaller church? Like what would have the number been for you to have been comfortable?
Yeah.
Or like what is the purpose in saying like I want a smaller church? Like I'm more comfortable in a smaller church.
Yeah.
Why do you think people say that? What do you think the actual like reasoning is that they say they want a smaller church?
Different reasons, but I'd say the biggest one I think is because people want an opportunity to shine. They want an opportunity to do their thing, to teach their class or to play their instrument or sing their song or do their special music or, whatever it is. That I think is probably the biggest deterrent. Or I shouldn't say deterrent, but motivating factor.
Right, because people will say that, like, there's no opportunity here for me to use my gifts.
Yeah. So, and I would say even if they don't say it, like let's say there's too much pride to actually say it, I think that that's under the surface somewhere. By the way, that's a lie from the enemy. Like, I can't be used here. That's not true. You might be used differently here. And if this is where God called you to be, then he, I guarantee you, is going to use you differently. But for the vast majority of those people that leave on those terms, it's that they weren't willing to wait and rest and allow the Lord a season to come and challenge and stretch and strengthen them in a new direction. That's probably one of my biggest reasons. Another thing that's come up is people have said, well, the more it grows, the more complicated it is, and we get away from like that crucible of really intense like spiritual pursuit.
Right.
That's another thing. And I remember your father, who's one of our elders, I remember Ron saying to somebody years ago when they were like, we've got to shut this thing down. We've got to like take the sign down and make sure nobody else comes. This can't get any bigger than this or we're going to lose some of the magic that we have. And Ron said, okay, so should we close it before or after you got here? And I think he's actually said that a number of times over the years. Yeah. And I love it because that's true.
Right.
Like, where's the cutoff?
Where's the cutoff?
Where's the cutoff? Like, okay, so if you're the one using your gift, there's got to be somebody in the seat who's on the receiving end of it. But what about their gift?
Right.
You know, and I think that that's like, you have to think bigger. If we're supposed to be thinking in like kingdom paradigm,
right,
we have to think bigger than, well, at my old church, I got to run the kitchen.
I know.
And this church doesn't even have a kitchen.
I know.
You know? They're talking about an Auntie Anne's. I don't know how to make pretzels. Yeah. I only know how to make potato salad and taco salad.
Oh my gosh. I remember Stephen Furtick one time
saying, and tuna salad.
Oh my gosh. Stephen Furtick saying, if you don't like big church, like you're going to have a hard time with heaven. And I, you know, of course, just being a little bit facetious, but it is a little bit funny. Like, what do you think heaven's going to be? Like small groups? I mean, maybe, like eventually, I don't know, but
I don't know. I think in heaven, everybody's going to shine. I think in heaven, we're all going to be in our glorified state, and literally everyone is going to shine, and it's not going to matter what seat you're in.
Yeah.
You're just going to be happy you're there. And that's what I love so much about people that come here, and they're touching heaven. They're touching the presence of God. And they don't care what seat they're in anymore. Mm-hmm. The people who get it are the ones that, like, it doesn't matter that I was on the who's who list of my last church. What matters is that I'm on God's list in this church.
Right.
And it's like they're just happy to be there. And I'm going to tell you, that's how I'm going to feel in heaven.
That's how you're going to
feel?
Like,
there's going to be better organ players, better keyboard players, better preachers.
And you still want to go?
I can't wait to get there. And it's like, hey, you know what? I'll be just as happy to sit here and listen to Billy Preston play the organ.
Babe, I would just like to say this. In heaven, I might be a better piano player than you are. Just wait.
Very doubtful. But
wow.
It could be.
Ouch. It's my glorified state.
That's true. Yeah. And what's holding you back? What's holding you back now?
Let me count the reasons.
But I do think that is the key. And even whether it comes to the big church or the food court or a cafe, a bookstore,
Well, that's what I was going to say. I still have to hit the merch thing because people often bring that up.
Yep.
And we were in a dilemma when we very first started saying, like, maybe we should have a church T-shirt. Like, maybe we should have a shirt that has, like, the church name on it or a bumper sticker or, like, all of these things. Mm-hmm. And it even took us a while for, like, social media and all of that to say, like, okay, we're going to do this.
Well, because like, I was leading and I was like, no Facebook.
And then after people, I think originally we might have only been on Facebook as, like, a business, like Facebook business.
Something like that.
And then so many people didn't have Facebook, and we were like, oh my gosh, how do we get information out to people?
Yeah.
And we had a website. And so we initially, and kind of still do, only took up social media and Instagram specifically. We don't have like TikTok or anything else. But
a church TikTok.
Oh my gosh, churches have everything, Zach.
Huh.
You're way behind.
Clearly.
To get information out to our church family.
Mm.
And I think we were kind of against the promote ourselves. Like, we weren't using it.
Yeah.
We don't use it as a tool to
grow.
I think there are some things that people could challenge there now when we like advertise King's Academy or like kind of getting signed up for King's Academy or new things.
But I liken that to, go ahead, finish your.
No, you can go.
I liken that to Orphan Sunday. Mm. So we used to advertise Orphan Sunday because we knew that there were a lot of people in the community who would connect to Orphan Sunday, and people who were in other churches, other believers, and it was a way to say, hey, you can share this, you can let your friends know we're doing this whole weekend or we're doing this whatever to really focus on this ministry. I think of that for the River Health and Wellness Center opening. I think of that for King's Academy. Like, this is not to grow the church. This is to make sure that believers in our region and our community are aware of the different ministries that they have at their resource.
Yeah, resources and things like that. And so as far as merch goes, this is like very challenging because we've gone back and forth. What do we make? Why do we make it? what does it say on it? Is it to advertise the church? Is it for people to feel like they're a part of something?
Yeah.
Is it just to go brand a whole bunch of things? I mean, it's definitely not to make money, that's for sure.
No.
There's definitely no money made on it.
No.
But what would you say as far as like HPC is concerned would be like the heart behind why we have any type of merch in general?
This is going to sound crazy. I remember back when some of our leadership had a hard time because we were asking for like a few $1,000s for a Christmas budget. And trust me, this does connect. And
Wait, what do you mean a Christmas budget?
like Christmas decorations to
decorations.
buy
Okay.
Christmas trees.
Okay.
And so some of our leaders were like, really? Like we need to spend that kind of money on Christmas decorations, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. I said, you know what's crazy is that there are some people who worship the Lord by using their gifts in the areas of design and decorating, interior decorating and like, artistic, creative, whatever. And making the church look beautiful is like my job of making it sound beautiful. And so I can appreciate that in that there's something in them that they want to express that for the Lord. So to me, that's in the vein of, hey, we're creating a medium here, just like the sound system is a way to communicate or express, what's happening in the heart. So I look at the merch of the church as a means of expression of what's happening in the heart. And I think of people on our team like Lori St. Ilmi and David LeBeau, and I think of what John always used to do this, right? He was the guy back when we were doing baptism t-shirts and stuff in the olden days. But I see it as there's this really beautiful expression of the heart of some of these ministries. Some of the Bags of Hope t-shirts that have come out over the years and just yes, there's a camaraderie of all those who are wearing it. And now, like, when a handful of people in the room are wearing in your throne room, there's peace, like the throne room sweatshirts and stuff. I am so blessed because I'm like, there is like a solidarity and like we're singing this together. But more importantly, we're believing this together. And we're expressing it together. It's not just going to be a song we sing. It's going to be a shirt we wear. Yeah,
that's good. And I think it's definitely been a good lesson for me because I think if you had asked me 10 years ago or maybe even like 5 years ago about all these kind of things that quote unquote bigger churches did and had, I probably would have had a little bit more of a critical edge about all of it.
Yeah.
And not maybe, I probably definitely did. In the season that we're in right now and like watching what the Lord is doing and how he's using all sorts of just like ridiculous things that you would have never thought possible and would have thought is all for like earthly gain. It's been cool to see so many things like redeemed, even if they aren't actually redeemed, but even internally for me, they've been like redeemed. And I think that's been cool. So I think that would be my prayer and encouragement to people who are listening to this podcast today.
And also not that it's never about, like, I think that there are churches that get it wrong. I think there are churches that it is about the brand.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was getting ready to say is just that is really if it can just be a heart posture for you to say, okay, maybe it is wrong or maybe it's right. But to not only give people the benefit of the doubt, but allow just like your heart towards the way the Lord is using different ministries and different churches, big or small, here or there, like so far away that you are only watching what people are saying negatively or positively about them on Instagram or negatively or positively on Facebook because it's a church down the street, is to really just let the Lord like check your heart on all of those things and let it be found with grace and caring for like what the Lord is doing and actually like blessing what the Lord is doing in different churches.
No, I think that's so good. And how does it all reflect the Father? Like how is it an expression of the Father? And if it's misrepresenting God, and I don't mean that like some legalistic old biddy is like, trying to paint something on it that's not there. But if it's blessing people by representing God in a certain way, then how wrong can you be, So anyway, let's close in prayer. Father, I just thank you for your grace, and I thank you that it covers a multitude of issues and ways that we get it wrong. But Lord, we don't want to get it wrong. We want to get it right. But we also want to stretch the boundaries of what's been accepted as acceptable Christianity. We want to impose our faith in areas of culture and project our heart in heaven on places, Lord, that you still want to redeem and things that you want to take back and things that you want your name on again. And so, Lord, we want to do that. And I pray, God, that as cords are lengthened and tent pegs are strengthened And as our tents are stretched out, Lord, that you would be blessed by it, God, that you would be honored by it, that you'd be made great by it, that it wouldn't be a church that's made great, but Lord, that even the world would see right through and right past all the finishes, God, that there wouldn't be a distraction there, but that it would create an atmosphere of invitation that says, hey, these people must take seriously what's going on in this building. And because we do, Lord, and we love you, we give you all the glory and the honor. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, friends and family, we look forward to seeing you next week on Our House.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is Our House from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.